Hi there, Glocal Citizens. It's Florence Adu, your host for the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around doing something in the world. Today, my guest is Olivia Asiedu-Ntow, and she is the founder and CEO of the African Connection Agency, as well as the co-founder of ScaleUp Africa. She is an entrepreneur with a creative flair that's super motivated, and she's after my own heart because she's also a yogi. So without giving away too much before Olivia talks about herself, let's move on into Olivia. Olivia, hi, welcome to this podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me, Florence. Really, really great to be part of this. This is awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I always like to make sure that I pronounce your name correctly. So can you say your name for us in case I didn't say it correctly?
Oh, no, you were so on point. It's definitely on point. Olivia Asiedu-Ntow.
Wonderful, wonderful. So my listeners, I'm sure you've guessed, we are in Ghana, and we're actually the closest far away that I've been so far in this new completely remote Glocal Citizens podcast. So we're both in Tema. And so we're practically neighbors, but obviously we can't be in the same space. So we're socially distancing across just a lagoon, no, the railroad tracks, basically. It's not even that far. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of background on our geography right now. So Olivia, tell us more about you. Tell us where you're from, where you're local, and what's your craft.
Sure. Funny enough, I'm from Tema, Ghana. I left when I was really young to the UK, and I lived out there for the longest time. I schooled and did, my university and everything out in London. So for about 30 odd years, and strangely hadn't really kind of come back during that period, even for holidays or anything. But I don't know, just had some kind of epiphany, wanted to come and visit. So I came down, stayed with my brother for about 6 months and loved Ghana. Bearing in mind, I wasn't working. I was basically on holiday. So Ghana was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I decided, actually, I can do this. I can do this. And so I went back to the UK, packed up my stuff, moved to Ghana. Cut to 9 years later, I'm still here. It was such a fun thing to do, I think 9 years ago when I was embarking on moving back home, because I'd never really it hadn't ever crossed my mind that I wanted to maybe work or live or do life in Africa, because it's pretty much brought up in kind of a European background in the UK, worked in advertising for the longest time, dealing with kind of marketing and social media back then. So when I moved back to Ghana and wanting to kind of, feel my way around in terms of what I could do, I slotted quite nicely back into advertising again. So worked with some really great agencies, kind of helping kind of build brands across Pan-Africa. So working in with brands such as Nestle, with their baby foods and Maggie, and a range of different brands that worked across Central and Western Africa. So that was a real eye-opener for somebody that has maybe lived in Africa before, but had the opportunity to see how the other half lived in various, in Francophone markets in Central region. And it was really great to have that complete clarity, because, being in Europe for so long, didn't necessarily know what was happening or had any affinity with Ghana. I mean, I had family here, but didn't really kind of connect. So it was really nice kind of coming back and connecting culturally. And of course, the mistakes were made, for example, kind of when people are walking around the street, whatever it is, in the UK, you don't say hello to each other, but everybody does it here. And that was very strange to me. But, you get used to it, and it's actually quite nice. It's actually really, I really kind of appreciated that. And it's just nice being back home and doing things that I know is going to be for my people. So suddenly became very patriotic when I moved back, and I love being back home. And it's been a journey and a half. It's been a journey. But it's been fun. It's been really fun.
So tell us, where in the UK did you grow up?
So I grew up predominantly in Northwest London and also in Middlesex. So it was very much a middle class, kind of area within sort of like suburbia, if you like. It was quite cool. It was really, really cool. But until you got to the stage of you become a teenager and you literally want to be kind of in central London and Shoreditch, doing all the cool urban stuff. But yeah, pretty much in suburbia for the best beginning part of sort of schooling. And they kind of moved into Stoke Newington, which was a lot more urban. It's like East London, a lot more urban, a lot more kind of, it had a bit more grit to it. So that was quite lovely. So yeah, London was good fun back then, really good fun. I don't know what it's like now. It's been a while since I've been back. Yeah.
Right. So tell us more about so you kind of mentioned how you just kind of were like, let me try this out and I'm going to come and check it out. And your landing was fairly soft because you came to with your brother and you had a home to come to basically.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So the question is, first of all, what was your inspiration to go into the field that you're in, number one? And then in terms of navigating and building up the cachet that you have now in the industry here in Ghana, what was that process like?
I think thinking back on it now, I must have had some kind of process because it all led quite neatly into what I'm doing now. When I started working in advertising, I kind of knew I had a knack to connect people or connect opportunities. In general, just connecting people together because I seem to be a bit of a social butterfly. I seem to know a lot of people. And people tend to come to me and just say, oh, I need to be able to do this. I'm like, wait, I kind of know somebody that can do that. So kind of working in advertising was really interesting because, of course, you're working with different brands who want to be able to connect to their stakeholders and actually being able to do that quite easily in terms of, knowing people in different pockets within Europe or even in the UK saying, this is potentially what the brand could do if they spoke to these group of people to be able to connect them and do interesting things. So from that point of view, it's more on the creative level. So when I moved back to Ghana, definitely it was a soft landing. So I think if I had to come in with nobody here that I knew, it would have been a lot tougher. But I think what also helped, aside from the soft landing, was there were platforms that were set up when I moved back 9 years ago, one of which is diaspora. And that literally just paved the way, literally, because that platform was like the go-to place to be connected or to connect to opportunities or things such as that. And I found that really interesting. And having then kind of worked through that and seeing how there was a real need for it, I started to kind of think this is a really great thing because I kind of used to do it without even thinking in the UK. So kind of brushed that aside and thought, I'll come back to that. Moved, worked back in the advertising industry here in Ghana. And of course, that opens up a whole new portal of different people, different stakeholders doing really interesting things. So when you work in advertising and you're working on different brands, you get to meet different walks of life. So, if I'm working with, say, an FMCG brand that makes tomato paste, you get to see lots of different kinds of people that are on that particular life cycle of that brand. So consumers, stakeholders, suppliers, and then you start to kind of build your network and then start to connect the dots in terms of, if there's an opportunity for a different brand to do something interesting, you're like, oh, actually, wait, the brand that I work on this side of the table, I have got this going on. Why don't you connect? And I started to redo that again. And it just always seemed to attach itself to me in terms of the connecting thing. Because the one thing I've noticed here is we don't like to connect so much. We just like to hold things very, very close to ourselves. So when people started to notice that I was doing this willingly, it became a thing. So like, whatever you need, go see Olivia Pope. So I ended up getting the name Olivia Pope. That's even what I use in terms of my username on my Twitter as Olivia Pope. They're like, yeah, whatever you need, Olivia will find you somebody or try and fix something for you to make whatever you're trying to do happen. And I started to realize that actually across all the different companies that I'd worked for, I'd been that implementer or that connector or the person that pieces things together and helps you develop whatever idea you're looking to develop. So when I finally decided actually I'd had enough of advertising, because at some point it felt as if a lot of the companies or brands that we were working with were not open to innovation, and you can't stay in the same place forever, literally. So I just thought, actually, I'm just going to step out of the advertising sector. But I built a really solid community across the ecosystem of being in advertising that I sat back and thought, actually, what I'd really love to do is to be a connector. I hadn't really thought through how I was going to do it. So in essence, I just started, I literally registered my company and called it The Connection. There was no thought process. It was a case of, I'm a great connector, I'm going to call you The Connection. But when I actually registered the business, literally, it was just that basic. But when I registered the business and they said, oh, I need to have a long form name, which I thought was odd, that's when I thought, I'm going to call it the African Connection Agency Limited. And then when I came back and I sat down, I told my dad what I'd done, he's just like, oh my God, that is amazing. There is something much bigger behind The Connection, which is how do you actually connect Africa better together? And that was a light bulb. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like that's why I came back home, to be able to better connect Africa. But then I started thinking, how on earth am I going to do that? It's so ambiguous. And so looking at some of the issues we face across different sectors, across, sanitation, health. I mean, we have a lot of problems. So then it was a case of, well, why don't you try help to fix some of these problems? And I'm literally sitting there looking at my dad going, I've been in Ghana for almost 5 years. Yes, I know a lot of people, but everyone sees me like this small girl. I even get called a small girl, literally. So you want me to go into the male-dominated industries and be like, I can help you fix some of these problems in these sectors by looking at how we create a sustainable ecosystem. And that was it. It was literally just plugging myself into these different industries. So I started off with agriculture. I attended as many agricultural seminars, events. I mean, they have like major events that happens once or twice a year. I attended all of them just to try and understand why are things so expensive? Why are produce so expensive? One of the things around it was, I think I went out to buy bananas and I gave the lady 5 CDs and she gave me 5 sticks. No, she gave me 3 sticks of bananas. And I thought, wait, am I being cheated again? Because I feel like I get cheated on a regular basis. And she said, oh, the farmers increased their pricing. And so this is how much it costs. I was like, what? Give me the farmer's number. Do you have it? She's like, yes, she gave me the number. Called the guy. And he started kind of ranting and raving. I'm like, where's the farm? And he said, drive to Ibri and I'll direct you. So got in the car, drove to Ibri, got to the spot to wait at. And I was like, okay, so where's the farm? And it's like, yeah, now you have to walk for the next 45 minutes. I'm like, why? It's like, your car won't make it because the road is terrible.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, then. So I started the walk. I don't know what the hell got into me. Started the walk into this abyss of nowhere in the bell end of frigging Avery. And I get to the farm and it's this beautiful mass, huge hectares of land that he had all these amazing like fruits and vegetables planted. I was just like, this is amazing. But why are my bananas so expensive? You've got all these things here. It's like, how do I get it down to the people that need it? And I was like, oh wow. Yeah. And
there's no
when
road.
I started to think, exactly. That's when I started to think, okay, let's now look at agri as a main sector and try and see how we can connect the dots in terms of making the ecosystem or the supply chain a lot more sustainable. So then it was a case of, okay, who do I need to talk to fix the road? Speaking to the local people within the area, had to go see the chiefs. And literally, like after maybe a year or so of doing this back and forth, and not really getting anywhere, I decided to write my concept note, which spoke around actually creating some kind of platform where public sector, private sector, political sector can all get involved and actually fix certain elements across the supply chain for agriculture. And I wanted to use it as a test case because once that's done, you can literally pick that up and use that across all the other sectors for sanitation, for education, for everything else. But agriculture was such a big beast that we're still in the agri space, and trying to get public and private and political to all be aligned. It's extremely difficult because everybody has their own agenda. They all interested in doing things for themselves. So kind of had to pivot to this whole thing in a completely different way. And that's where I bumped into my business partner for ScaleUp Africa, where she said, I've been trying to do the same thing for the last however many years. I have investors who are interested in coming on board. I work with SMEs in the agri sector. They're all crying and suffering. And then we both sat, and it was almost like an eureka moment. We're like, wait, why are we trying to beat ourselves so hard to try and recreate something that people aren't ready for it? Why don't we help the SMEs scale by actually holding their hands and help them grow within the agricultural sector and getting private sector to assist? Let's leave the government, let's leave politics out of this, because if we're able to help the SMEs scale and the corporates help them scale, they'll end up being the future customers and clients and stakeholders of the big corporates. So it's in their best interest to work together and help us do this. And that was it. ScaleUp Africa was born. So I started in the connecting. My friends started finding like investors. We started looking at SMEs, and we started to actually see progress, which was great. And then of course, COVID hit. So we had to pivot again. So we're doing all of this webinars and masterclasses to actually build our online community. So it's been a journey from where it started to where it is now. It's just like, this is actually where we're supposed to be, to actually help SMEs who are maybe not able to be part of the program or reach us, is to actually see rich content where they're getting masterclasses or they're being part of a webinar where they can understand how to pivot within the situation, because we're always going to need food to eat. We're always going to need food, basically. So if we're able to help these SMEs kind of scale and grow and get them into kind of a growth mindset, we're all laughing. So that's kind of where it all kind of started. It's really crazy. Now I'm saying out.
Well, Amma has been a guest on the program. So she's been a guest. So she spoke about not only Scale Up, but also the Dan residents and exactly the kinds of things that you're speaking about in terms of problem solving for SMEs. But I want to ask you, so in this context, because you've hit on two things that really ring in my ears in terms of this is my observation as well, is we have this tendency for inertia, right? So this farmer was just basically like, well, I'm here doing what I do, and I'm going to keep doing what I do. And I'm not going to, my answer to my problem is just to raise the prices, right? So in case I needed to bring, 5 more people to move the product, then that's what I'm going to do. So that's one, like, how are you dealing with inertia? And the other is, part of that inertia is when you say people keep things to themselves, because I think that is definitely a huge plague that we're dealing with in terms of like, just not being able to, because you're a connector and that's what you do. But how do you deal with when you come up against these cultures of really holding on to the information?
Yes. So how do I deal with sort of this inertia of people keeping stuff to them? What I found was initially when I found people were not so open, it was frustrating. And I literally wanted to cry and just curl up in the ball and just be like, why are they being so mean? I didn't understand it. And I try to understand why, but I also see from the other perspective in terms of where a community of, I don't want to say gossipers. We like to know what's happening in other people's lives, but we don't like to share because either we've been bitten badly by maybe being a little bit open and someone spreads your story around. Because Ghana, in essence, now it's not, 2 degrees exactly. It's not 2 degrees or 6 degrees of separation. It's literally 1 degree. Basically. So it feels a bit like a village where everybody knows everybody's business, and that's probably why everyone's being really closed about being super open or wanting to help. But there's also the other thing which I found, which is I don't want my neighbor to do better than myself, which is very weird in a community where we're all about, we're the nicest people when you come visit us and all that kind of stuff. So there's that weird dichotomy of we're really nice, but we're not going to be helpful if we don't want to be helpful. We're not going to try and be as open as we possibly can be. But to your face, people assume Ghanaians are the loveliest people. And we are. But there's this other side, which is just like, yeah, I'm going to keep stuff to myself sort of thing. So that was really, really, really interesting to kind of to notice. But one of the ways I was able to maneuver around that is I noticed that the one thing that we appreciate and we really like is when someone is doing something really awesome and is open to sharing their thoughts around it, or someone is doing something with someone abroad, we rate that. And so we're like, okay, great. Now I want to get involved because you did something with someone from abroad. So that has more clout. And so I want to be a part of that. But if I try to do something locally, nobody would be interested until I've been able to reach out to somebody internationally or globally. That's when everyone's just like, oh, we're open to collaborating. We're open to sharing our thoughts. We're open to help you connect. That's when people are a lot more open. So I didn't necessarily try and overthink that. I just thought, okay, that's clearly what works here. I'm just going to jump on that and see how that works. But I think moving forward, what I've tried to do is actually tap into my tribe. So the people that I know, their mindset is similar to mine, or they're more open or more innovative, and kind of work in that particular group and maybe trying to expand gently outwards by inviting people in to just say, it's okay. It's okay to actually kind of help other people. It's okay to be innovative. It's okay to think outside the box, because I think it also dates back to how we were educated in school. Like I did schooling here for a very short period of time at SOS, Herman Minor. And I was lucky enough to go to a private school where you're kind of given the opportunity to speak your mind. Not too much, but still speak your mind. But I think a lot of schools back then, and maybe even now, is whatever the teacher tells you is gospel. You don't speak back. You don't, you're not allowed to critically think for yourself. So yes. I think that's also the other thing of, oh, maybe if I said it and it might not be correct, I might be vilified for it. So that's probably why people also keep stuff close to their chest. So involving like-minded people and then tapping into the ones that it won't take too much for them to also be those kinds of like-minded people. And then just hoping and praying that after year 4, 5, or 10, you've built enough of a community of innovative thinkers and agile thinkers who are open to helping you build and connect and evolve and do all that kind of wonderful stuff.
Right, right. And so what's interesting is I find that it doesn't matter what your economic status is, because it goes across the socioeconomic spectrum, that same kind of behavior. So clearly it's cultural, and clearly in some ways it's definitely related to fear in some ways. So in your marketing mind, how do you imagine, or what are some of the things that you do that speak to the different subsectors? Because because of your work, you're dealing with the farmer, you're dealing with the business person, you're dealing with the corporate, and in each of those sectors you have that same kind of mentality. So how are you, from a marketing and spin perspective, able to address it? Or what are some ideas that you might even just share with our listeners about how to address opening people's minds?
I think a lot of it is to do with just stripping it back and figuring out what is the single truth that the farmer needs to hear, or it resonates with his journey. Whatever. So a lot of the times when I'm talking to brands who want to be able to do, just really highbrow stuff, or are thinking, oh no, the consumer is not bright enough to understand it, I'm like, do you understand their journey? Like, there's that famous thing about walk a mile in someone's steps, and you might be able to be empathetic to understand their journey or whatever like that. It's like, understanding the consumer or the stakeholder, each of these stakeholders you're trying to communicate to, understanding their journey, understanding what they view or they see as important to them, and then carving out a narrative that fits that. But it's not too far away from what your overall vision is of your organization. So one of the things that I wanted to do for the connection in terms of tapping into these different stakeholders was, with the farmer, I literally just said to him, what is it that you want to be able to achieve? And for him, it was really simple. It was, I want to be able to feed my kids, send them to school. And that was it. He didn't go into any massive diatribe about, I want to be able to sell in supermarkets. I want to be able to, no. And that was it. And I think a lot of the times what we try to impose on someone's journey is, no, you don't want that. That's too basic. But that's what he wants. And so just like, okay, that's all you want. Brilliant. How are we able to help you do that? If you fix the roads, I'll be able to get down the road easier, where my produce, by the time I get to the end of the road, I haven't lost 40% of my produce. That means I have to increase the prices. And that means I end up selling less. So then you start to go backwards and work out, okay, the roads are fixed. All your produce will come down safely. You'll be able to sell it at a reasonable rate. You'll be able to sell all of it, and so make a really decent harvest. Your consumers or your customers or your suppliers or your other stakeholders will be happy because, you're selling it at a really good rate, which means when they sell it on, they're also going to keep their customers happy. So it's a knock-on effect. As opposed to saying, no, don't worry. Instead of maybe looking to fix the roads, give them this big plan about actually what we need to do is get your produce into the stores and do this and do that. So actually, strip it all the way back and just understand the consumer's journey and what their single truth is. I just want to feed my kids and take them to school. That's it. How do I do that? Fix the road. That is it.
Right.
Very simple. So there's that whole effect on like, okay, great. So how do we then get the government to fix the roads? Well, if the government fixes the road, maybe I might vote for them. Basic stuff. Great. Scold the people that look after that area, the municipality people, whatever they're called, and say, if you were able to fix this road, which has a community of maybe about 4,000 people, that's 4,000 votes when it comes to voting. So why don't you just fix the road? You're speaking their language because that's their truth. All they care about is numbers. Not all they care about, but that's what they care about, the numbers. So, okay, speak a language that they understand. Like, that's how you market to them. Okay, you're about numbers. Fix the roads. Keep him happy. He'll be able to bring 4,000 votes to vote for you in this particular region. Done deal. And it's just speaking the language that affects each of these people across the ecosystem, if you like. Or the ecosystem of being in agriculture. Just some really simple, basic stuff for people to understand that you understand their journey and you're empathetic enough to understand what they really truly need without imposing your own big ideals on them. And that's kind of how I've kind of used to be able to work through these different stakeholders that I come across.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And speaking of speak, This is where I go into my Glocal Speak question. We want to hear what you hear. So I ask my guests to share a word, phrase, or saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you came to value this as Glocal Speak.
I don't know if it's global speak, but I've actually kind of seen it being used much more than it was. So
Okay.
I find that I find that every time there is an issue, be it in my personal life, in my professional life, or in any of my lives, everyone just says, oh, God will provide. Or there's a way they say it in Chi, and I can't remember how you say it properly. Nyame wo hɔ. Like God will provide. And literally, it just cuts across, even in professional settings. Oh, God will provide, literally. And I remember a really good friend of mine that I used to work with, a publicist, literally said, hope is not a strategy. And now I notice that people are using it a lot more. And it's like, seriously, we're just going to sit back and just hope that everything goes well. No, we've got to, plug in. We've got to be a part of making sure this strategy happens, or this opportunity or this solution actually happens. Don't just sit back and just say, Nyame wo hɔ. Pray for sure. I'm a Christian. I will pray, but hope is not a strategy. That is not a strategy. Right. Something that I'm noticing that we do that a lot. And I'm like, pray, definitely. But don't just sit back and wait for things to just happen because you're hoping it will just all fall into place. You have to put some kind of action and plan behind it for it to work. Yeah. So for me, I always think back to them like, hope is not a strategy. And I absolutely love that saying. I love that saying.
Right. Okay. Nyame wo hɔ, and hope is not a strategy. Yes. Yeah. But it's true. You're so right. It's this kind of defeat that, and maybe not defeat, I guess it's just faith or something that's like, that takes the onus off of the self, which is very interesting because we are such a, I want to say religious, more than necessarily spiritual, but a very religious country. So I think it's the default form is, we'll just give it to God. That's just what we'll do. And I think across the globe, that's really kind of an ethic, but we're seeing now that, sure, like you said, let's pray, let's do that, let's have faith, but we actually have to take action. There are things that have to be done, and we've already been anointed to do those things. So let's move on.
Thank you. You've just hit the nail. We've been anointed to do those things. So come on, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I want to get a little bit more into scale up from a evolutionary perspective. So particularly what you're doing now that is specific to our times now, because a lot of what would have happened, you would have been working closely, hand in hand, face to face with these companies. And now you're moving to a whole different medium, which is fine because, distance learning has been something that's taken place. But just tell us more. How are you evolving that? Because it's almost a whole new business model to some extent.
It is in a sense, because initially, I guess it's not too much of a jump from where we were going to start from. So we have sort of a squad team of 10 enterprise experts who are basically the ones, individuals within various areas that help a company grow. So if you think of the legal side of it, the marketing side, PR, policy, VAT, you name it, like every single part of the HR, all those areas, leadership skills, all those areas. A lot of these partners that we're working with, we're all going to do a portion of the handholding virtually.
Okay.
But also there's going to be a mix of virtual handholding, but also face-to-face where they book time in and actually sit and have a conversation, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't like a million miles away from what we're trying to achieve. The thing that slightly pivoted more was we wanted to be able to have like a fly on the wall documentary style show that actually showcased, the warts and all, the good, the bad, and the ugly of running your own business in Ghana or in Africa, because it's the most difficult thing anybody can potentially do. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's like almost as if you're riding a bike, you, the human being on the bike, is on fire. The bike is on fire. The road is on fire, and there are no tires. That's like you being an entrepreneur in Africa. Like there is just, you're constantly, firefighting because the system is not, it's not built to a proper stage where things can happen fluidly. So there's a lot of, ups and downs. And so We wanted to be able to capture this and almost create sort of a roundtable discussion around it, like a show, maybe once a month or once a fortnight, which actually gave you that little piece of like the little bit of a drama around running your own businesses, the successes, but also the failures. Because all we hear day on, day in, day out is how successful this startup has become. But they don't tell you how hard it is to actually run a business. So you have all of young grassroots, amazing graduates coming out going, yeah, I'll run my own business, when you haven't even you haven't even done a paper round. Like, you don't even know how to set up a business from scratch. And you're sitting there going, I want to build a global brand. Okay, we're in Ghana right now. There are some mitigating circumstances that's going to stop you from doing that. So there are ways and things that you need to learn before you get to saying, right, I'm going to turn my side hustle into a full-blown enterprise. And I think we don't share those stories. We don't share those narratives. Like, I remember a year into running my business, and a client decided, oh yeah, I don't have any money to pay you. Literally. From there, I learned the hard way in terms of understanding where I can find my reserves, understanding how I'm able to make sure that these clients that I'm working with, they're vetted in a much, much better way, because we don't have the vetting systems here. So all of these stories, I thought, oh my God, I must be suffering by myself. And it got to a stage where there'll be weeks in which, and Emma's even helped in the recent times, where a client decided, oh, I can't pay you. And literally you're like, wait, what? Even to put petrol in my car to go to a meeting was difficult. I didn't have any credit. A friend of mine put me up for about 2 weeks because I live in Tema. All my meetings are in Accra. None of my clients are open to doing a Zoom call, because by then they didn't understand the need for it. Right. I want to see you. And a lot of these meetings could have been done by email. So all of these extra expenses, and I thought, am I going crazy? Am I the only one going through this? And I thought, no, I'm going to put my story out there. So I posted it on Facebook. And the number of people that contacted me on the side to say, I'm going through exactly the same thing, made me think, wait, we're all suffering in silence, and we're not showcasing the warts and all of being an entrepreneur. And we're assuming these kids who want to set up their own side hustles become global brands. We're kind of laughing at them thinking, oh yeah, you don't understand it. Of course they don't understand it, because we're not sharing our stories. Right. And that's where the penny dropped in terms of like, can you imagine if the small number of people who have reached out to me, can you imagine if we're able to put this show on a Pan-African platform, how many people are going to come and say, oh my goodness, I thought I was alone, but I'm not. So what are we doing about it? What if a client tells you I can't afford to pay you? What are the banks doing to help you with like 0% interest rates on, I don't know, overdrafts, as they do in the UK? What is everyone doing to try and help, a small, medium enterprise to flourish and not even become a big corporate, to even just have an extra, like open up another branch in Tamale. Sometimes that is what ScaleUp is all about. It's not about just being on a global platform because of the situation of the economy, of the situation of the country that we're in, and not everything being as fluid or as, we have issues, we have problems, we get it. So ScaleUp is literally being as practical as possible. And we wanted to be able to showcase all of this on a show every fortnight, bit of drama, bit of spice, but also saying, look, this is what it's at. We're giving you warts and all. We're giving you the fun bits. We're giving you the hard bits. We're giving you the flashy bits of when you understand the practicalities of running your own business. So that has pivoted a little bit in terms of, okay, let's build an online community and let's share these stories. And let's start to see how corporates can come on board and help. Investors can come on board and help. But also maybe shame the government into fixing certain things in the economy. Right. Just be like, oh, we can't do this by ourselves. You're basically paving the way for us to fail. Please help us grow and scale, even if it's just to open one extra shop in Tamale, because to us, that would be a success. And that was it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So there's still possibility with that. I mean, I think everybody now is recognizing that they are content creators. So in your training modules, I'm sure you're now, figuring out how to make sure that people know how to properly operate their mobile phones and their cameras and their microphones so that they can communicate with each other effectively. So question for you then, I mean, you kind of were moving in this direction. So what does impact mean for ScaleUp? So you have this, concept note and everything, particularly with the sector you're working on. What does impact mean in the context of that? And how are you measuring it?
I think before I kind of like really understood the journey of each of these stakeholders. In my mind, my impact was like, we're gonna, scale you up again, trying to force this thing on them into international markets, selling in Tesco's and And then actually sitting down with Amma and realizing and understanding the plight of each of these stakeholders and actually talking to a number of them, it's like actually a lot of them are quite happy where they are. They're like, I'm quite content. So there wasn't like even if it's not like a massive shift, it's still impact. Because if you look at if you're a startup, how you're literally bombarded with like accelerator this and accelerator that, and they throw money at you, and 6 weeks it's like go, 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 go. And then after that, no one gets in touch. Like they're giving you the money. They've given you 6 weeks of like, yeah, rah, rah, hey, you're amazing, blah, blah, this is how you can do this, blah, blah, blah. And then they leave you for about however long. No one reaches back out to you to just say, oh, by the way, the money that was sent, like, what are you investing in? Bearing in mind, these people don't necessarily have, and I've noticed this, and I don't think I'm out of time in saying this, a lot of these startups or SMEs do not have a growth mindset. Right. So you throw money at me when I don't have a growth mindset. I'm going to go buy me a brand new car. Hell yeah. I'm buy myself a beautiful, apartment. And then the business is still going to be doing whatever the hell it's doing, which is failing slowly. So there's actual stats that startups that literally have this whole accelerator thing where these big kind of hubs or these big accelerator programs say, we impacted 10,000 startups to be able to, we impacted 10,000 startups. Okay, great. And in what sense did you impact them? Because they're more quantitative than qualitative. So
got it.
For ScaleUp Africa, it's more quantitative. So in essence, we're not looking at big impacts. We're looking at impact that's actually going to make a difference in the lives of the people who are currently living it. So if I'm able to shift your mindset from going, oh, I'm comfortable where I'm at, if I'm able to shift your mindset to actually think, oh, actually, I can see a potential to maybe do, and it could be something really small. I can see a potential to maybe collaborate with, there's a guy next door that makes rice, whatever it is, and I make tomatoes. We can maybe get together and do something. That for me is amazing because even right now, people aren't thinking like that. They're not thinking collaboration. They're not thinking, oh, it's not just about me. Maybe if I worked with this guy, we could put a package together and go to, FMCG brand so they can take, no. If we're able to get a number of different suppliers, stakeholders, whomever are within the supply chain, within the agri sector, or within any sector at all, to think collaboratively, to think beyond me, instead of it being me, it's we. How do we grow together? How do we build together? But also at the same time, see potential as to love to be able to, open another shop in another place in Ghana and see how I can work with that community and start to build. They might seem like little, but that's huge in terms of where they're at now to where that could potentially take them. So yes, impact would be great if we could say, oh yes, we helped 10,000 SMEs scale. That's great. But the on the ground practicalities of getting to that stage, we're light years behind. We are light years because we still have to work with people to even think beyond, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I mean, nobody ever grew, nothing great ever grew out of being in your comfort zone. And a lot of these people are in the comfort zone because they have not been shown the way that could actually entice them to say, oh, we could do this in a more collaborative sort of way. So we're not saying, consumerism should kind of completely take over, but also not saying just be in your little corner, doing your own little thing. Because actually, if you open up and are collaborative with other people, of the right kinds of people, it would really build your brand and bolster you up as an individual to do more and affect change with more people. And I think that's kind of the impact that we're looking for. It's more quantitative as opposed to big numbers, because we know that there's a lot of things that we need to do around even capacity building. Right. There's a great deal that needs to be done on that side of things. So for us, it's about that. And that's why the storytelling comes in, because if you're an investor and you're not seeing the big numbers, you're kind of like, well, what change did you guys do? But if we're able to coin it to a really, impactful narrative and saying we've shifted mindset from here to here, which has changed how people think, and therefore that has changed how people see things, that's going to be impacted not just on you, but your community and your community's community. And that can only mean bigger and better things for everybody else. So for us, it's definitely the quantitative side of things in terms of impact as opposed to the qualitative side of things.
Sure. And I like that you said impactful narrative, because
Yeah.
that's the new story. And that segues into my mindset hack question for you.
Ooh,
So
okay.
this is what I ask: what is your favorite or an innovative mindset hack? This is one that you can imagine, or one that you know of, or one that you practice.
I must admit, being a bit of a yogi, I do love the, I can't remember what it's called. Oh my God, it's called Calm, Daily Calm.
Oh, okay.
So
It's an app.
yeah, so there's Daily Calm, or even there's like the 21-day one that Deepak Chopra and Oprah do every so often.
Yes.
And it's literally kind of like, it sets my mind right. Because I think for me personally, when I wake up in the morning, when I wake up in the morning, my mind is literally racing, because I'm just, oh, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do this. And you end up not really doing much, because you're constantly kind of overthinking everything. Mm-hmm. So for me to be able to actually get my mind right and actually get it focused, because I'm very kind of comfortable kind of juggling or managing ambiguity, which can be a curse and a blessing at the same time.
Right.
But I think having these apps or these things that actually quietens down my mind and makes me super razor sharp focused in terms of, right, I'm going to concentrate on doing two things really well. Because don't forget, the space that I'm coming from in terms of my mindset and how, I was educated in Europe was very much around, you're driven to the point where you're bleeding through your fingernails. It's go, 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 go. There's no time for you to relax and whatnot. You can juggle 17 billion things at once. Do it, go, 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 go. And then you end up not being as efficient as you can be. So for me, it's actually getting these calming platforms or apps or mindset shifts where literally kind of like just pulls it back and just says, just concentrate on just doing two things really well. Just two things. And you're not a failure for not having done 17 billion things in the last second, or haven't caught up on this and juggled that and being able to balance this in your head as you're doing. So all of those things, it really helps to use those kind of the calm, the daily calm, to actually just calm that whole super driven whatnots when you're working in London, where everyone's literally thriving like it's craziness. And it's the same thing in New York and kind of other big cities. So kind of that calm really helps to really be super focused in terms of, okay, I'm only going to try and accomplish two things, and I'm going to do it extremely well. And yeah, that's been very helpful over the last couple of years in terms of zoning in on that, because over here it's a case of, we're very relaxed with everything. But when you're brought up in Europe or in the US, I feel like you're kind of, you're pitted against each other, going, you've got to drive and go, 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 go. And then you just end up kind of like juggling so many things that aren't necessarily, they're not as productive, if you like. So kind of being more super focused, I'd say that's mostly, for me anyway, that's what's been really helpful for me to utilize.
And I think that's key, because even now that everyone's on lockdown, everyone's in the house, there's so much still going on in the house. If you have a family, there's a lot going on that has to be managed. Oh, God, it's not just, oh, I'm home. I mean, I live by myself, and so I'm here on lockdown pretty much primarily by myself. So it's not such a big, but even so, everyone else's distractions, because they're distracted, they come into play. So I think that's, whether or not we're moving around, whether or not we still need that time of stillness, that's focused stillness, so that we can actually get our minds ready. Because I can see so many people, if you wake up and first thing you do is look at the COVID news, you're a mess.
Oh my goodness. Exactly. And there's a lot of it.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people's practice became. I mean, typically a lot of people wake up and listen to the news, but the COVID news is nonstop. And I'm not just saying don't be aware of it, but there's a time and a space for everything.
Exactly. But there's also that weird, I've started to notice kind of this content on social media mostly, kind of almost alluding to the fact that at the end of all of this, if you're not able to speak Russian at the end of all of this, then seriously, why have you been at home for 8 months? You're like, really? What kind of pressure is this? What kind of pressure is this?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like, oh, all of a sudden I'm super person because I'm home doing nothing. No, actually. You're probably just getting your mind right because you needed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. What is that? Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I read, what, please?
Wow. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Olivia. We'll have to do it again. I really want to invite you back for some of our roundtables. I'm going to start moving into that direction as well, so that we're actually looking at how local citizens are really and can influence the narrative, kind of like what you're saying in general. Before we go, I like to ask a question of my guests that gets a little bit more into the who you are, not just from your craft perspective. So tell me, what are you watching these days?
Oh, that's dangerous. Only because I do love my Ratchet TV.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear
Ratchet
it.
galore. So you have the hip hop stuff, loving hip hop. Yes, I am that girl. Ratchet is my go-to. My other very guilty pleasure is what is it called? It's Made in Chelsea. I used to watch it a lot when I was in the UK, and I still watch it to this day.
Okay.
It's called Made in Chelsea, and I think it's just escapism, really. More so now because I'm just like, there's a lot of crazy news and whatnot's out there. I just want to watch Ratchet TV where it's just like, oh no, she didn't. Oh yes, she did. And it calms me. It really does.
It's true. It's easy to just let that, roll off your shoulders and move on to the next. So you don't have to think it.
Exactly. So
Okay.
yes, Ratchet TV, Queen of Ratchet TV. Yes, bring it.
Okay. All right. That's funny. So Olivia, any final words as we sign off? Anything you want to say to our guests? Last words for now?
I think just for all of us to do our parts, however big, small, minute, let's all do our parts. Let's all be better connected, because this is the only time that we will ever have this period to just dream and fulfill certain things that we thought we'd never have the chance to do it. This is the time to do it. But in the same breath, don't go crazy. Just do you. And this shall pass. All this will pass. But this is the best time to kind of just dig up certain kind of passions that you've had. You thought, oh, I'd never have the time to do it. And I feel like, although, yes, it's COVID and it's terrible, there's a silver lining within that, which is awakening people's desires. And it's just awakening people in general, because you have this time to maybe have some time to think, reimagine certain things. And it's good. It's always good to reevaluate and move forward. And I think this is the best time to do it. So let's all move forward. Let's not let this dampen us at all. Let's all move forward, for sure.
And that's it. We can only ever move forward. So that's great advice.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, Glocal Citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast that has borderless mindset around doing something in the world. We're with you each and every Tuesday with a new episode, and you can catch us at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you find your podcasts. So until next time, bye for now.